So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rachel Zedek, and I am a director in Peterson, Thailand. And I'm really excited about today's webinar because SME agribusiness is something that I work a lot on with my colleagues across Asia. And I'm just really excited to be doing these kinds of innovative events that are free so that we can connect to more people who are also interested in food. So to start, very quickly, so our theme at Peterson is Next Generation Sustainability, and we align our mission with the Sustainable Development Goals. We were founded in 1920. We are a Dutch registered company, and our mission at Peterson is to adapt the design, delivery, and measurement of agricultural and environmental ecosystems. We collaborate with business, investors, governments, foundations, NGOs, communities, farmers, and consumers, prioritizing the Sustainable Development Goals to generate sustainable social, environmental, and economic returns. So as you guys all know, that there are 17 SDGs. None of them are specific to food safety, but SDG 17 is all about partnerships and collaboration. And so there's not just a me and or you, but there really is an us when we talk about sustainability, and we believe that food safety is a big component of sustainable agriculture. So at Peterson, we have four technical platforms. We work with rice, we work with forests, we work with aquaculture, and we work specifically with SME. And our SME food safety program was actually born in Afghanistan. And so it's a group working with SME food safety. We represent more than 100 commercial certification programs, many of which are food safety components, like ISO 22000, FSSC, and HACCP, of course, which is really the base of food safety as we know it. So we've actually dedicated an entire platform to helping SMEs become food safety compliant. So that program was first launched in Afghanistan and has now been expanded into countries like Myanmar. And I know Sampath in Sri Lanka, you guys were already doing some very cool stuff with food safety. And we've done Myanmar, Cambodia, Vietnam, and now Thailand. So our priorities are values-based decision-making, transparency, which means risk and responsibility for everyone involved in their food safety planning, financial inclusion, innovation, and of course, in innovation, we are very keen on climate smart agriculture. So we actually see a tie between food safety and the future of climate smart agriculture. Next. One more slide. So now I want to talk about our experts today. I want to introduce Mr. Sampath, and I'm not going to butcher his last name from Sri Lanka, but Sampath, you lead a lot of the food safety expertise that we have in the South Asia region. And really will get to share with us, I think, your expertise on how business is really using food safety to their advantage in Sri Lankan exports. And then Ms. Ratana Yuang from Cambodia. So you've just joined our team last year. We're really excited to have you. And you are actually going to be able to share more with us some of the challenges maybe going on in Cambodia. So if we click on, oh no, guiding questions. So today's guiding questions for us are, what are the benefits to develop and implement a food safety program? What does HACCP work? How does it work in food production? Is staff training important in food safety systems and why? Do food companies in your own country think food safety is important? So those are things for you, Sampath and Ratana, to think about. Do consumers prioritize food safety? Why or why not? And what is the first step for small businesses to start with food safety in their businesses? And what can a company expect to invest in a food safety system? And what benefits can they hope to achieve? So today our goal is that we want to answer those questions from the perspective of Sri Lanka and Cambodia. And so if we look at, for example, as an introduction to why implement food safety, we look at Cambodia. Cambodia has really had some challenges in food safety for domestic food security. And so food safety is still a concern, whether it be food imports from into the country or food that's being imported. We know that Cambodia is still trying to figure out its way to be able to ensure that it's supplying people in Cambodia with safe food. But in Sri Lanka, it's a very different story. because Sri Lanka is really looking at food security and food safety, I think, as a business tool, Sampath. So we think that you guys sort of represent for the two of us two very interesting food safety. Sri Lanka, who maybe 10 years ago still struggled with more food safety issues in the country, but is now looking at food safety as a business tool. And Cambodia that still wants to, of course, have more agribusiness, but also has some food safety issues. So now I want to hand this over to our experts, because I don't need to talk anymore. You guys are really our food safety experts. But I want to remind everyone who's partaking in our webinar, the content from our webinars is part of all of our training programs. So I'm really excited to just get to lean in on some of our amazing experts. Sampath, I'm up now, and you're going to talk to us about the basics of food safety and what is food safety, and maybe explain how this isn't nearly as scary. It doesn't need to be as scary.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. Okay, we talk about food safety, and then we will see what are the basic components of food safety, and then we will look the developments in food safety in Sri Lanka and how we can continue the discussion. So everybody knows food safety is really important. Food safety is the safety of the food product at the time of consumption. That is very important. If you manufacture a product safely, but if you cannot deliver it safely to the hand of the consumer, then your food safety will fail, because final consumer is the point that we have to assure the food safety. So in that case, we have to think on the product, think on the packaging material, and think on some other supportive materials which are we deliver to the hand of the consumer. Let's have some examples, like with some chocolates, they are giving some toys, which may be a marketing material, but you have to take care of those materials also as a part of safety of the product. It's a part of safety. So this cannot be achieved by single person. So throughout the chain, throughout the value chain, everybody has to implement and has to play their role for food safety to assure the safety of the product at the time of consumption. So if we move to the next slide, we can see the basic components of food safety management system. So the foundation or building pillars of food safety management system is GMP. Everybody knows that, good manufacturing practices, or in other words, we can say prerequisite programs. Prerequisite programs are the basic things which are needed for any food industry. As an example, if you take a meat industry, water bottling company, maybe a fruit dehydrating factory, everybody needs these GMP or prerequisite programs, but the intensity of application may be different from industry to industry. Like example, personal hygiene, incoming material inspection, providing good quality water for production and cleaning, and how do they control their packing operation. Okay. Then after that, there is, on top of that, there are SOPs, and on top of that, HACCP principles. But you cannot implement HACCP principles without implementing GMP or other SOPs. If we discuss basic things about HACCP, there are 5 steps of five preliminary steps and also 7 principles. Those 5 preliminary steps which you can see are the basic steps before you implement 7 principles. You have to assemble a good team with multidisciplinary knowledge, because you have to know the product, you have to know the production process, and you have to know the supply chain of finished product. Then you have to describe your products, identify the intended use, process flow, and verify the process flow diagrams. This should be done by the HACCP team. Can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, uh, those are the 7 principles which started maybe 1960 in USA. They have developed 7 principles to assure the safety of the food which is given to the astronauts. But the principles uh, remain same till now. First, you have to identify your product and conduct a hazard analysis using your process flow diagrams. Then determine the critical control points in a logical way. That is a bit technical thing, but with the support of a person from scientific background, you can easily conduct that using Codex decision tree or using ISO 22000 7.4.4 principles. In this case, in a small manufacturing unit, what we expect to first implement the GMP principles that will control most of the food safety hazards, but specific hazards are controlled by these HACCP principles. Like if you are doing a small dairy yogurt processing unit, GMP will control maybe 99% of hazards, but specific hazards like the pathogenic bacteria coming with the milk, incoming milk, that is controlled by pasteurization process, which will become a critical control point. Okay. So implementing these 7 principles and monitoring a system, you will control your food safety hazards and it will support to deliver a safe product to final consumer. The final 2 steps of HACCP principles are verification procedures, which you show to your customer, which you show to your consumer that your product is safe. And as a business unit, you have to show that your product is safe for sales at anywhere in the world. So in that case, you have to test your products and show it is within the critical limits, or it is, in our example, it is absent with any pathogens which can cause harm to the consumer's health. Then the final part, the record keeping, is also important because actually in any food production, you can run it without record keeping, but in as a system, you cannot get any verification or any improvement without record, because after production, after doing anything, or after solving any problem, you cannot keep it in your mind very long time, because you are running your production daily. So you need to have an effective record keeping system for your HACCP system. We will move to the next slide, please. Okay, this slide says basically how you set up your HACCP system, and you have to have monitoring system, and you have to keep your records. This is for improvement, root cause analysis, and to get the root cause analysis away from your production processes. Actually, to conduct these things, you have to have a staff which is capable of doing expected activities. That is why training is very important, and the production staff and the quality assurance staff in your businesses has to taken care of those food safety aspects and food safety parameters. And at the same time, all the food handlers has to got an awareness about the food safety, then they can deliver their results.
But Sampath, so this is, and we're gonna keep a lot of questions to the end.
Yeah,
but
sure.
This is really important about when you identify your HACCP team, because your HACCP team is gonna lead this kind of work. correct?
Yes, definitely. That team should have multidisciplinary black backgrounds because uh, if they don't, if they are coming from same background, sometimes they do not identify what are the important things in the food. Because engineering people sometimes more aware about the manufacturing process and the machinery, but the production people sometimes know more about more things about the product.
So, but
But we,
sometimes for small businesses, for small agriculture businesses, maybe there won't be a production and an engineering.
yeah,
Maybe there will
maybe
only be one person available.
yes, but
Is it
it's
still
better to
possible for a business to implement this kind of program?
yes, yes, of course. What they can do in any factory, at least there may be few people, at least two or three people, not only one. Single person cannot manufacture a food product. So they can get together and discuss their food safety. Then that will be their food safety team.
Cool.
Okay.
Because this audit, it does seem like a lot is going on. It seems like there's a lot of very technical work. So can we maybe take a step back when you talk about one of the questions that I've just posted is,
Yeah, sure.
how do we, beyond the HACCP map, right, the hazard analysis,
Yes.
how, talk about a little bit more about that. Because that actually feels like that could be quite technical and quite scary for a food
Yes.
business, but I know that it's actually a quite straightforward process.
Yes, it's simple process, but the top management need to commit for the food safety. That's the key thing. And then after that, implementation of HACCP system is not that difficult. Now, as a practice in Sri Lanka, all the tea factories has to certify for, has to get their system, HACCP system implemented. And even for small food business, they are implementing HACCP and HACCP systems.
So if a tea mill comes to you and says, we want to implement HACCP and we don't know how to do it, how long are you recommending that they take to design and to train their team and to implement a food safety system? Is it 1 month? Is it 2 months? Is it 6 months?
Uh, if they are coming from zero, it depends on how hard they work, but
Mhm.
you need to have maybe around 3 months or more than that.
And so
Maybe,
one of the
maybe,
reasons for that is to implement the system, but you also need to have records for an audit if you want to have a food safety certificate.
yeah. If they are going for an audit, they need to have records. But also, even if they do not go for an audit, they need to keep some records
Okay.
because they need to get improvements in their food safety management system. Without recording, they cannot keep everything in their mind, and the people do not know what happened exactly, maybe after 1 month or after 2 months time period.
So one, what I hear from you is that a company doesn't have to have a food safety certificate. That isn't the value of the food safety system. It's not just to get
Yeah,
it.
yeah, certification is one topic, and food safety is also another topic. I will explain this because certification represents somebody. Certification more supports to the business because your consumer, your supplier cannot visit your factory. They
Okay.
rely on the certificate. That's why certification process is important. But food safety is a culture that should derive from business itself, and they can go for certification because it will add value to their market chain and it will add value to their
So
financial.
that's a great point. So the food safety system on its own is going to give the business an impact. It's going to offer the business ownership.
Yeah, the honest thing is nowadays people don't believe what you say, but if there is a verification, then there is something to show. That is the point.
Okay.
Yep.
So do you think now, because I think you said something very important, the culture of food safety. Do you think that Sri
Yeah.
Lankan businesses now have a better culture of food safety than 10 years ago?
Definitely, definitely yes.
And what
Because
do you,
everybody in the
go ahead.
yeah, everybody they know that the number one tea is coming from Sri Lanka,
The
and
number one
it
tea.
is recognized. Yeah, yeah,
And so what is the
and
number one tea
also
variety?
because the government involvement is high, and they set some regulations to implement some food safety management system in the factories. So now the factories are running with the food safety system. So actually that will create a good image on overall country and overall production processes.
Cool. So the government has helped to put these systems in place or to prioritize these systems, and maybe industry didn't do it as quickly, but now they are doing it and they're seeing the benefit of implementing food safety.
No, actually, even in the private sector, there is supply and demand. It is self-driven market.
Okay.
So if you want to compete in a market, you have to have components with you. So
Okay.
definitely food safety certification played a big role and has been playing a big role in food safety, food market in Sri Lanka.
So one last question, Sampat. What do you think is going to happen next in the food safety market in Sri Lanka? Are food safety companies going to need to adopt better standards, or are they going to, is HACCP going to continue? So HACCP SL 1266, which is the Sri Lankan standard, which
Yeah,
we well with
actually,
our clients in Afghanistan and also in Cambodia. So
yeah.
we default to the Sri Lankan standard, but what do you think is coming to the Sri Lankan industry?
Now there are now new ISO 22000 version is in
Yeah.
draft stage, and it will be released maybe end of 2018. But honestly, the HACCP principles, it I think it has been reviewing maybe from 1960s, 1970s, but up to now there are no any changes. But the other food safety systems, which all are based on HACCP principles, and those food safety standards evolve with the current issues in the market, and every 3 years every standard is reviewed for its new suitability.
You know, I'm going to say this. I think that for companies who are starting from zero, HACCP is a
Yeah.
great stepping stone. I think that that is the
Yes.
core codex alimentaris of food safety is HACCP, GMP. And I think that if
Yes.
that is the first goal that a company sets for itself, it's a great goal.
Yeah.
All right, so
Yes.
we're moving on to you now, Ratana, and we're
Yes.
going to come back to you later, Sampath. We're going to move over to Cambodia. And I think that, Ratana, this is a chance for you to talk about those critical control points and maybe some of the challenges that the Cambodian companies are nervous about. So can you start to walk us through the process of building an effective food safety system? You're on mute. You need to unmute.
Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Ratana from Cambodia. Thank you, Mr. Sambat, for your presentation. And well, you have learned with Mr. Sambat on HACCP, what is CCP, which is designed to control the specific hazard that have been mentioned by Mr. Sambat. And now I will talk about the prerequisite program, GMP. Prerequisite program in short is POP. POP is not part of 5 preliminary steps and 7 steps of HACCP, and it designed to control environment where the product produced in and the employee behavior to manage the practice of employee. And the common practice for the hygiene, we talk about hygiene. The common practice normally they use hair restraint and apron. So, however, this must be clean and changed and necessary. Next. And one more POP is about hand washing. Hand is a main agent to contaminate the product if it's not held properly clean. This, and can you tell me when do you usually clean your hand?
Oh, what is the question, Ratana?
Can you tell me when do you usually clean your hand?
After the bathroom.
After the bathroom, yeah. Yeah, that's correct. So let's go through to the slide. What is the principle that we need to clean our hand in the food safety system? One is before starting your work, and then after touching your hair, ear, nose, or mouth, after sneezing, coughing, scratching, after eating or smoking, after handling food, and before handling another. And then before leaving or return back to your station. And of course, after handling garbage and cleaning up, and so on. And here's demonstration so on how to wash your hand properly to be compliant with the food safety system. There are mainly here's 7 steps for your hand cleaning. No, sometimes when the operator is not clean hand properly, their hand after washing even worse than before washing. Do you think so? Yeah, why? Why is that so? Why after wash is worse than before wash?
Well, Ratana, by the way, we know that people touch their face and their body up to 1,000 times a day.
Yeah.
So I think that it's a really good point that we don't just focus on hand washing only at like the bathroom time, because we actually have new contamination all the time on our hands.
Yeah. And so now we let's go through to the step. The first step is wet your hand, and then add soap and rub your hand together, cover hand soap, and between the finger and also under the nail. And after that, wring out the soap and dry your hand. The time for the contact time for the soap, at least 15 to 20 seconds for the food safety system. And so now you can tell me what is the answer for why before wash is better than after wash. The key is the last step, drying your hand. Is you already clean your hand, and then your hand you use your hand to turn on the faucet and open the door that can be recontaminated. So that's why it requires to have the facility not hand operate for hand washing. Normally, the best practice they use a sensor and auto close door, things like that. And we can verify the cleanliness effectiveness by culture the hand before and after, culture microbiological on the media before and after washing. Then we can know how effective it is. And next for receiving. Okay, next slide we talk about receiving. Receiving is also one OPOP. We focus on the receiving raw material, ingredient, product package. And what do we need to do when there is arrival of this material? Yes, of course, firstly, we need to see the cleanliness of the vehicle plate number, driver ID, seal a container and the lock of the container, and then review documentation. To review the manufacturer, compare the amount that the company have been ordered and the actual, whether it align or not. And why do we need to inspect for this criteria? it to avoid contamination and also fraudulent, product fraudulent. Sometimes it can be fraud on the way or the driving, things like that. And after inspection, to the agree criteria with the supplier, it can be reject some material that is not comply with the specification. And what do we need to do after inspection? Of course, after the material inspection, we need to store, to keep it. And at this stage, the storekeeper need to be aware of the product category, characteristic, and where to keep it properly. As stated in the SOP, and in order to avoid contamination, some material just keep in ambient temperature, and some need to keep in specific temperature. They need to control it in the cool room, something like that. So after receiving, the people need to keep the material as soon as possible in order to keep it in the good quality.
So Ratana, a company may have different risks from different products that they are receiving.
Mm-hmm.
So if they have a raw food product, that raw food may have a different risk than if it's a frozen food product.
Yeah, they will have different product and then they will store at different temperature accordingly.
Okay, so it's not just temperature, but that can be one of the issues to address.
Yeah, one issue.
But raw food can have a completely different set of challenges than frozen food or a processed food that is in their supply chain.
Yeah. And the main parameter that we need to control in the storage room is humidity and temperature. Like, for example, like the perishable food, we need to keep at 4 degrees Celsius, and frozen fruit to keep below minus 18 degrees Celsius, or dry ingredient to keep at ambient temperature and humidity less than 55%, something like that. And for the, do we need also to control, to store the return material? Yes, of course, return or damaged material, we need more attention to control it, to make it secure from contamination or misuse. It needs to handle in secure or segregate place. And also for non-chemical, non-food chemical, it also to keep in designated place with asset control. Always keep it locked when it's not in use. And in the warehouse management, circulation management, it implement FIFO, first in, first out, first in, first out, and need to have well identification for each category of the material, and to keep enough space between the rack. It recommended at least 26 centimeter from the wall, and also between the row and from the floor 15 centimeter. Yeah. Next. And one more slide is about pest control. Pest control, what a pest here? Pest here we talk like fly, cockroach, rodent. It can be avoided by eliminating it from entry. And to avoid habitat and food supply for them, so they cannot survive, cannot in. And what if for the other that also enter the facility, we also need to destroy it or cut it. How we, what are the methods to cut those gain entry? We can put glue or vegetation, insect killer. For vegetation, it need to use for approve the chemical that approved to you, be approved. And as a control to make sure that it's not make a contamination. Insect killer also we need to keep in the proper place. Otherwise, it will attract the insect come to the facility. It recommended to keep at the high maximum 2 meters for this one. And the pest control activity. Most of the company, they use a third party to do it. But some company, they use their own resource to manage the pest control activity. For this case, the staff that manage the pest control activity need to have a proper training before doing the job. Okay, next slide. And what is the GMP or HACCP in efficient? When the program of GMP or HACCP in efficient, it can lead to consumer illness or dissatisfaction, emotional trauma, unfavorable publicity, and also increase customer or consumer complaint and loss of limb and profit accordingly, lawsuit and criminal in some countries, and so on, and also impact to their staff as a negative. It can lead to a negative employee attitude and layoffs of the people of the job, and also the division cost. It's very costly.
So Ratana, those are the negative things, but obviously what do you think in Cambodia? What is going to be one of the drivers for Cambodian companies? What is an incentive for Cambodian companies to start using food safety? Because we heard from Sampat earlier that Sri Lanka, of course, had its own journey to recognize the value of food safety. Maybe that was a little bit of business incentive and the government getting involved. Yeah. What is it going to take for Cambodian companies to use more food safety?
You mean to have more company use the system, right? Food safety system?
Because we want to also talk about the positive impacts of an effective GMP program, which is where I want Sampat to come back into this. Because, you know, Sampat, your companies have definitely had more of a positive impact. But I want to make sure that we talk about that an effective food safety program will reduce the risks of contamination. It increases product reliability, so the consumer will know that it's a safe product.
Also, it will increase the relationship with your customer.
Okay. But I also think that we don't talk about this, but I think it can also reduce the overhead. It can help a company save money and streamline their overheads.
Yes.
Yes. Save money.
So Ratana, I come back to you, and Sampat, I'd like you to answer the same question after Ratana, but what is going to be the big incentive for Cambodian food companies? What's going to be the first thing that's going to make them start to take more of an interest in the food safety program in Cambodia that we're working on? So we've had a huge interest lately from rice companies, right? The rice sector is very keen on food safety. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it will it depends on the market demand. Yeah, customer demand requirement, customer requirement, and recently in Cambodia they export the rice meal.
Okay.
Yeah, in order to have this rice meal export, it needs to have certified HACCP, at least food safety certification.
So more companies, because we've seen from the Cambodian government that they have prioritized better quality rice. That's kind of a policy thing. That's kind of like something you mentioned to us. The Sri Lankan government got involved and said, this is really important. The Cambodian government is doing the same thing in rice. And so what do you think their biggest challenge is going to be? Do they see yet that HACCP is an incentive for them? Or do they feel like it's just something they have to do?
Currently, it's just less company aware of the importance of food safety. In fact, we have around 530,000 SME in Cambodia. Yeah, but only 30 of them only apply HACCP, apply food safety system. So it means say they just don't much care about the food safety yet unless the customer require, especially for export. But for local, they still not. They just think it's a big investment for them to do
So
it.
Sampath, why don't you talk about that? What do you think are going to be the new incentives? Is the culture of food safety better? Is it stronger in Sri Lanka? Or is it still going to be driven by the market?
In both ways, I think.
Okay.
Because most of the food businesses cannot survive without food safety. So in one hand, it is market driven. But food certifying for food safety will enable you to get more customers,
Okay.
more consumers. At the same time, it will give additional benefit of getting the factory owners confidence that there is a system running on.
Okay.
Also, on the other way, any food business, if the image is damaged, you cannot make it back as it is. So it will take long time. So always food safety systems, food safety management system has to be in place to run a food business.
And that, as a segue, as a bridge to it, is about investment.
Yes.
So we believe that obviously, we need to see companies willing to invest in the scoping of a food safety system, the actual people that will implement that program, the tools and equipment they may need, methods, the environmental infrastructure, and if they decide to pursue a certification, that can also cost money. So can you both talk to me, Sampath, can you talk to me about the willingness of Sri Lankan food business to invest?
Actually, it's the willingness to understand the food safety. In some companies, they don't have to invest a single dollar to implement food safety, honestly.
Okay.
Because let's see, for past 100 years, by eating a food product, it's very remote to get a people die because they used their own food. But at the same time, if you are manufacturer, if you are let's talk about some traditional businesses, traditional food processing. Yeah, traditional tea processing or traditional rice processing. Nobody get died because of single cases or single incidents. But the problem is when you are coming to manufacturing or when you're coming to trading, you have to set the principles because your production volumes are high, you have to face higher risk, and you have to understand what are the key aspects of food safety management system, what is most effective to the product safety.
Okay.
How the food contaminants are introducing you to your food product. Then in this discussion, we are focused on small food businesses, maybe. So taking the food safety system implementation as a challenge, but in some cases, if you really understand the food safety principles and system, sometimes you don't have to spend anything. But sometimes you have to have to develop good manufacturing practices or GMP in your factory. Sometimes you have to renovate your factory building. Sometimes you have to renovate your factory floor and things.
So
then, of course, you have to spend.
I think it's good to clarify that in HACCP for an audit, there is a stage 1 audit and a stage 2 audit, and we look at both the documentation of the system, but also the physical operations of the factory. So it's important that if a factory has food safety problems, that they fix them. Like if they have fungus on the walls, or if they
Yes.
have walls that are missing, or if they have unsafe water content, like they're using unsafe water source.
Yes, you have to address those things, but at the same time, you have to consider how many factories are like that. Maybe if you take 100 factories, maybe out of 100, 80 are running with proper building, running with proper water. But yes, rest of them has to implement GMP principles for applying for
So
HACCP.
what we want companies to realize is that food safety itself, and what we've gotten really good at doing is we, within 3 to 5 days, have a whole program. We have taught companies that thought food safety was like something from outer space. And it's not that difficult. You can, you learn the principles. The documentation systems, some parts, as you said, are not so complicated. And maybe what they'll have to focus on is actually the investment into their own factory or their own processing center.
Yes.
And actually learning food safety doesn't have to be that much of an investment.
No, not at all.
Ratana, what about the Cambodian side? What's going on in Cambodia? Why are so many companies reluctant to invest in food safety?
Yeah, they are so reluctant because the first, like the law, big law.
Okay.
We don't have the we don't not yet finalized for the food safety law yet for food safety, and the one they afraid of the investment for the infrastructure and design.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, because of the awareness, I mean, they already have awareness. We just do the simple thing and correct thing at the first time. It will be easier, but they just don't know how to. What should be the proper way to have the infrastructure, their design, and finally, when they think about the certification, we just realize that it's not comply. It needs to change.
Yep.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. It does.
So, but I think that how do we help companies? And we've started this process in Cambodia. But how can we work? Do we need to work more with governments so that government helps to share this information? Because food safety is not a rocket science, but it's an extremely powerful business tool, right? It's not just for me. I think it's an obligation, Sampat, as you said, a culture, agriculture industries, that they accept their responsibility to produce safe food. But I think that we also, how do we better, Ratana, communicate that this is a business opportunity for companies?
Yeah.
Is that the responsibility of the government or is private sector? Are companies going to do that work?
I think both. Food safety is just voluntary yet. Just voluntary, not yet need to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're at that time. We're in our last 10 minutes. We are in our last 2 minutes, and while we want to have a discussion with anyone from, we have a small chat room going on. Do you have any questions that people want to ask or answer from the attendees? Okay. What's the first question, Sai?
Yes, so
Wait, you're on mute.
Okay, so the first question we have is
Sai and I are secretly in the same office, so she's going to be on my computer because there's a
Yes.
problem with.
So for the first question today, we got from Kun Piyatip. She asked, is there any hazard for non-timber forest products like honey?
It's a great question. Sampat, can you certify a wood what is it, from a forestry production? Like wild honey?
In that case, yes, you can certify. But how you certify is the problem. How you control your food safety principles. You have to justify that, how you collect it, where you collect it, what are the controls, and what do you do to the product after collecting. Yes, you can certify.
But what if you don't pasteurize the honey?
No, it's not.
Raw honey.
Yeah, it's not necessary to pasteurize everything.
Okay. No, I agree with you. So that's interesting. So food safety isn't about pasteurization.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Sorry, next question.
I think it's like is if we collect white product, is
Yes.
there any we have to under the rule for the government as well, right?
Yeah. In that case, there are two things. If you want to implement a food safety management system with HACCP principles, or if you go on to certify it for HACCP.
Sorry.
Yeah. For that question, I have two questions
Yes.
to answer it clearly. Are they going to implement a food safety management system with HACCP, or are they going to certify it for HACCP?
SACCP HACCP for HACCP.
They are going to certify. They want to certify.
Try on payment.
We have some question from when the register.
Okay, I will explain it to you. In any wild harvest or anything, you can apply HACCP principles. Okay.
Okay.
How you apply is the question. Okay.
Okay.
But when it comes to the certification, it's a different story.
Right. So we need to separate that there's good food safety practices and then there's food safety for certification.
Yes. No, the thing is, for food safety certification, you need some additional documentation and things.
Sure. Okay.
That's why.
So that's a component of the audit itself between
Yeah.
stage 1 and stage 2 is
Yeah.
not just the physical, but also the documentation of the food safety system.
Yes.
What's another
Yes,
question there,
and
Sai-san?
another question is into integration of HACCP at the coffee farmer.
Coffee farmer. Actually, HACCP principle is for food processing.
Processing. So it'd be for the coffee miller, for the roaster.
Yeah, if they have a pack house or if they have a primary processing unit in the farm, yes, you can apply HACCP principle. But for growing plants, you cannot apply HACCP. After harvesting step, you can apply HACCP principles.
So primary production certifications and systems are similar to like organic and global gap, and
Yes.
those deal with primary production.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So then the coffee in this model would have to come into a coffee mill, and then HACCP could be applicable to the product.
Yes. After harvesting, if their product is coming to a pack house or whatever the building inside the farm.
Okay. So that would be part of the HACCP plan.
Yes. Yes. But when it is in the tree, you cannot apply it.
Yeah. So when it's in the ground or in the tree, HACCP doesn't apply. It's when it comes
Yeah.
off and comes into a physical building to be processed
Yeah.
into the supply chain.
Yeah.
Interesting. So guys, I want you to tell me, do we have any more questions, Sai?
No.
Oh, hi, Eileen from Singapore. So Eileen, we use there's obviously a HACCP checklist, a GMP HACCP checklist.
Okay.
And that's, I'm reading Sampat where you have some questions in the chat box. So
Okay.
this is Eileen from Singapore, and can I check to see you globally have a standard checklist for food safety? So food safety checklists are specific to the scheme. So for example, Global Gap has a checklist, organic production has a checklist, HACCP SL 1266, which is the Sri Lanka standard. And we typically default to that standard for smallholder businesses because it only requires 1 audit a year. So we did support Dutch HACCP, and that requires 2 audits a year. So it's very difficult.
Can I explain it more?
Well, let me answer the question, Sampat, because that was her very specific question. And we do obviously have checklists for all the production schemes that we certify on. So yes, if that's a checklist that you'd like to see, we can access to understand what it looks for in the audits. But Sampat, what did you want to share?
Yeah, in Dutch HACCP, for some scopes, they have audits. You have to conduct audit every 6 months. But for HACCP accredited by SLAB, the
An
the
annual.
audits are coming annually.
Yep. And then
But
it's
but but
renewal
both
every 3 years.
but both the principles are based on Codex HACCP principles.
But Eileen, are you talking about second party audit? Are you talking about a participatory audit, like a self audit and claim? I think yes. So obviously participatory guarantee systems aren't third party. So obviously it depends on what the requirement of the market is. You know, most of the markets I think we're talking about for export do require third party certification. It's not a participatory system. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, yes, I think that does. But you're welcome, Eileen, to answer more if you have them from us. But we do believe also the SL 1266, to be very clear, Sampat is non-accredited by another body. So we think that in terms of the codex, it is a really great baseline for any company. To clarify one thing, Sampat, and this is how I teach. ISO 22000 is ISO 9000, which is a management practice, plus HACCP together.
No,
So
not.
It's not entirely, Sampat, it's not entirely, but for SMEs to understand what they would have to implement,
Okay.
taking the HACCP plan and adding a quality management system. So, and by the way, Eileen, so there's no second party audit protocol for HACCP, for ISO 22000, it's all third party. So I want Ratana and Sampat. Ratana, do you want to give us your thoughts? And maybe I want to leave you with, tell us what you think the future of food safety is in Cambodia. And what do you think that, what and how can we better support the private sector and SME food producers to prioritize and adopt food safety? So that's my question to both of you, Sampat. And Sampat, for you, maybe the question's a little different, because I think your businesses there have prioritized food safety. You guys have a blockbuster economy in organic. So can you guys just share with us what you think the future of food safety is in your country?
I think it's a big opportunity in here to improve the food safety system. We need to the main point that we need to do first about the awareness to the consumer and as well as the customer. Can you hear?
I'm here, I was on mute.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Sai-Sat's face.
Yeah.
Sampat, are you done, Ratana?
Yes.
Sampat, I know you have an opinion on this.
In Sri Lanka, the food safety is always evolving itself. So it will change with the time and problems. And also there is the market is also expanding with the most of the new companies, the companies, they want to have the food safety. If we talk separately about certification, yes, certification is also growing. Most of the companies want combined certificates with other aspects like how they protect the environment and at the same time food and food safety and also social components.
So
Maybe
you see
sometimes
your companies going forward and taking HACCP to the next level and looking at environmental and social.
now, actually, HACCP principles are same, but the management system surrounded that is changing with the market requirement.
Okay.
Okay.
But we are at the end of our hour, and we really want to thank everyone for participating today. We will run more food safety webinars in the future. We also run webinars on all sorts of crazy topics. So we hope to also run some webinars for specific countries and specific languages. So if you have an idea, please share it in the chat box. And you obviously have Kunsai's email, and you can always write her directly and share your ideas with us. And I want to thank our speakers today, Sampat. I want to thank Ratana in Cambodia, and Sai, wave to everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.